what's going on, everyone? Thank you for joining us for another episode of our podcast. I'm Les.
And I'm Mo.
And this is the Les and Mo Show.
What's up, guys? Before we jump into today's episode, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, give our podcast a rating and a follow. And you can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok at The Les and Mo Show.
Welcome back again, friends. This is episode 5. How exciting is this? Something special about today and next week's episodes is we are on our honeymoon in Oahu. And we have been doing our best to investigate some stories to bring to you that come straight from here. So tune in next week for a very exciting episode that we have put together. But today, we are going to do something just a little bit different than what we've been doing before. Mo and I have both picked out one conspiracy theory that we didn't tell each other about. So he's got something and then I have something, and then we also picked out a conspiracy theory together that we're going to talk about at the end. So are you going to start us off here? Okay, great. I'll
start it off. So the main premise of my conspiracy theory is about reincarnation.
Ooh, it's a good topic.
So by definition, reincarnation means the rebirth of a soul in a new body, or basically a new version of something from the past.
I'm just so fascinated by reincarnation anyways, just because it is amazing to think that maybe, you lived one life and maybe your time ended abruptly, and so now your spirit is in this other life form, if you will, and you have a chance to complete your life cycle maybe. Very cool.
I think it's definitely possible. I know it's against in some religions to believe in it, but there are a lot of claims, and the two main ones I'm going to be talking about. The first person is a little girl by the name of Shanti Devi.
Ooh, what Shanti have to say?
So Shanti Devi of Delhi, India was born in 1926, and she barely talked until she was about 4 years old.
Okay.
When she started to speak, she insisted that she lived with her husband and a son in a town called Mathura. So that's what she was claiming, that she lived with a husband and a son, and that she had died 10 days after giving birth.
Wow. So
she remembers this.
Okay, that's disturbing.
So eventually a teacher in Devi's school asked for her former husband's name, and she replied, Pandit Kedarnath Chaube. I'm trying my best to pronounce all this correct, guys, but so that's the name she came up with, Pandit Kedarnath Chaube. And the teacher actually identified a man of this name in Mathura.
Wow.
And wrote him a letter. So it's all checking out so far. And again, keep in mind, it's the 1920s.
Yeah.
They did not have the internet back then, so there's no way this kid, 4 years old or 5 years old at this time, would have known that.
Yeah.
There's no yellow books or whatever.
There's no internet. There's no, unsolved mysteries on TV talking about true crime and stuff. How would you know any of that?
So after Chaube, got the letter, he started talking to the teacher, and he confirmed that his wife, Lugdi, died during childbirth 9 years prior. So everything is checking out so far with this little girl and her claims. And
Yeah.
when Shelby traveled to meet Shanti, he introduced himself using his older brother's name. And Shanti immediately caught the bluff and she was like, "No, you're my husband."
Whoa, she
So
called him out like that. Oh my gosh.
that's crazy, man. I mean, can you imagine as a third person in this situation
You're
being like,
probably so taken aback by all of that. And I want to know, did she meet the son
I couldn't
that
find that.
she passed away after having?
I
Oh my
try.
gosh.
What if the, no, she had a son, so
Yeah, he would
she
still
had
probably be
yeah.
alive. I mean, this is what, 10 years later after she died that this stuff is happening.
Yeah.
So,
So she's about 10
wow.
years old at this
Oh
point.
my gosh. Okay.
Whew.
So, wild.
Yeah, I mean, this is crazy, man, because this is all checking out. Like, this is crazy at this
Yeah,
point.
insane. Oh my god.
So
Okay.
she caught the bluff. She was like, "No, you're my husband." So she would recall little details of Lugdy's life, like the person who had died, and she would tell her husband what his favorite food was,
Oh
and she
boy.
would also like kind of recount that she used to take she would bathe in the courtyard
Oh
of
my
their house
gosh.
where they lived. So
She knew all the
she knew
details.
all the details, and she also chastised Shelby for remarrying, even though he had promised that he would never remarry.
Oh, that's so sad. Oh my god. Okay. So, your first life is a love story. You marry, you're like, "Oh, I love you so much. I could never remarry anybody else." Oh, my wife is dead. Now I'm going to go ahead and remarry. And then the
Yeah.
wife freaking comes back.
I mean, can you imagine from the husband's point of view, though? Like, that is insane. Like,
Yeah, he's
your
staying in the doghouse. I'm just kidding, but
well,
yes.
your wife dies after giving birth, and then you
Hmm.
think she's gone, and then just like that, like 10 years later,
Yeah,
this happens.
she comes
That's
back.
insane, dude.
That is insane for sure. Wow.
So this next statement is the reason why this is one of the most popular cases. So Mahatma Gandhi was around at the time, so he eventually heard of the story,
Hmm.
and he met with Devi, and
Oh,
he set up a committee of 15 people to basically evaluate her claims and make sure, there's no fraud, and
yeah.
they basically could not debunk this.
Wow.
And Mahatma Gandhi stood and supported her claims. So I mean, Mahatma Gandhi was iconic. And
Yeah.
he is still this
He
day.
was known as
People,
a bold, truthful,
yes,
respectable leader, and he's backing her. That's pretty significant, I would say.
that's intense.
Goodness, yeah.
Yeah, there are too many facts that line up with the story, especially for a little girl. From age 4 to 10, she
Yeah.
claims all this, and it all checks out. And
So did it all end at age 10 then? Like it all just kind of slipped
well,
away?
I didn't put her whole life story in this,
Sure, sure,
but
but
she met the husband. I mean, it all checked out. Like, what do you
yeah.
do after that?
Well, I mean, it's not like she's gonna marry him again, but yeah, that's
Yeah, it all
crazy.
checked out, and they all the claims were correct.
Yeah,
So I
I've
mean,
heard.
after
Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
she ended up passing away at the age of
Oh,
61. So that's how her life ended. But that was about it. That was her
wow.
story.
I've heard of other cases of reincarnation where it was like a little kid, but by age like 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, in between those chunks of years that they just forget. It just fades away and it's just slowly at a time they remember less and less and less and then
So that's true. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, as they get older, the dreams start to go away.
Mhm.
That's actually the case with my next story. But
Oh.
with some of these reincarnation claims, the adults are normally the ones that claim something like crazy. Like, for example, there's this guy by the name of Billy Meyer
Mhm.
who claims to be reincarnated as like a prophet, one of the prophets.
Palladian or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, so he basically claims that he was a part of this ancient civilization and that he's been being visited by the Pleiadian or the Pleiades,
Yeah.
or Pleiadians are from the Pleiades star cluster,
Yeah.
basically aliens.
That's why I said Pleiadians, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm probably not pronouncing it right,
Well,
but
I don't know. Like I just remembered that name. Go ahead.
so he's been getting visits from these aliens. He actually, built relationships with these aliens, and
Yeah.
Like he knew this one alien that ended up dying, but then he knew that alien's like grandchild or something. Like so he was connected with this family of these
Wow.
aliens
That's
from the star
wild.
cluster. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he claimed to be an ancient alien basically, and then my next story though is the most popular one. Um, a lot of cool theories and claims on this one that all checks out. So this is a little kid. His name was James Leininger. He was born on April 10th, 1998. So this is obviously
Yeah, I think I've heard of this
more
one.
recent
Yeah.
than 1920. So, um, basically, the first incident started occurring when he was about 22 months old in February 2000. And his father took him to the Kavanaugh Flight Museum outside of Dallas. That's where they were living at the time. And James was fascinated by the planes, and in particular by the World War II exhibit. And they actually ended up leaving 3 hours later, so they were there for quite a long time. You know what's weird with some of these cases? There's like a point in their life that like starts it, that kicks it off.
Yeah.
Like for him, it was going to this museum
Like
and
a trigger.
like almost like that Raven Simone look, like going
That's
back,
so Raven. Are you serious
like
right now? Oh my god.
like the kid went into that zone where he just like kind of went back in time and all this happened.
Oh
So
my god. Oh, so that started.
yeah, so he went to the museum, they left, and then within 2 months of the first trip, James developed a habit of saying airplane crash on fire. And he started slamming his toy planes nose first into the family's coffee table.
Dang.
And he would repeat this all the time.
That's so sketch. Can
Yeah.
you imagine being that parent and you're like, what the hell are
What's
you
wrong with you?
doing? Yeah.
I'm going to go return you right now.
Put it right back. Just put it right back.
JK. So, so James's father would actually travel a lot for work, and whenever they would take him to the airport, he would say, "Daddy, airplane crash on fire." And this happened a lot, and his dad was like obviously astonished, like he had no idea.
Yeah.
His parents had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
So, around this time is when James began to have nightmares.
Oh.
And this is what we had mentioned earlier, that, usually it's like nightmares is how they remember their memories or dreams. And his behavior during these nightmares seemed to be, they involved screams at first and then included words as well, like airplane crash on fire, little man can't get out.
Oh my god.
So he was traumatized with these nightmares, obviously. So James would shout over and over again, kicking his legs up in the air and, absolutely crazy
Well,
with
if
these
you're
nightmares.
a kid and you're dreaming about planes crashing into the ground nose first, I imagine that is pretty terrifying.
Oh yeah,
Like,
I think I've had airplane crash dreams before in my life.
Or those falling dreams
down
in
dreams.
general.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
not fun.
I hate those. Yes.
Yeah, you will definitely wake up like a jump scare.
Petrified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after a few months of this, he had several conversations with his parents about the dreams. Usually he was, preparing to go to sleep, when they would talk about it. So he indicated that there were memories of events from the past. He said his plane had crashed on fire and that it had been shot down by the Japanese. 2 weeks after those statements, James said his plane was a Corsair, which was a fighter plane that was developed during World War II. And he talked about flying a Corsair several times. That's pretty crazy for a kid his age to know.
That?
Yeah. Especially for something, in history, you would have to be. I mean, I learned about World War II in high school. I didn't know what kind of planes they were flying.
Straight up. Like, I didn't know. Well, like, no. Like, oh, that's a bomber. That one's to refuel the other ones.
Dude, I don't know what kind of planes they were
what?
flying at all in
No,
World
I have
War II.
no idea. That's
So,
crazy, though. How does he know this stuff?
Yeah, how is he figuring this out? So, on August 27th, 2000, when James was about 28 months old, he told his parents he had flown his plane off a boat. So when his parents asked him what the name of the boat was, he said Natoma.
He said that specific ass name?
He said Natoma.
What?
So his father would search online for the word and eventually discover a description of the USS Natoma Bay. Ooh. So, and Natoma Bay was basically an escort carrier station in the Pacific during World War II.
So he got that correct as well.
Yeah.
What else does he know? This little genius.
His parents would ask him, I mean, I would do the same thing. I would ask him like, "Hey, do you remember any names? Like, what do you remember?" And he would say that he remembered only himself. He would say me, quotates, me or
He would talk in the
James.
first, third person or whatever.
He just remembers him being himself, and he's
Yeah.
James in his dream
Okay.
or his nightmare. So,
Huh.
a few weeks after James gave the word Natoma, his parents asked if he could remember anyone else who was with the little man, and James responded with another name, Jack Larson.
Wow. Okay.
Now he's kind of remembering people like how the little girl
Yeah.
in India, Shanti Devi was remembering. So
Do we know who Jack Larson?
yeah.
Jack Larson is?
So one day when James was just over 2.5 years old, his father was looking through a book he was planning to give his own father as a gift for Christmas, and the book was called "The Battle for Iwo Jima, 1945." And his father reports that James pointed at a picture showing an aerial view of the Battle of the Island, where Mount Suribachi, a dormant volcano, basically, and he said that that's where my plane was shot down. And he
Wait a second.
Yeah, he said his father responded, "What?" And James responded, "My airplane got shot down there, Daddy."
Okay, so hold on. Time out. I have a idea question thing right now. So James's dad was going to give his dad this book about Iwo Jima.
1945. Yep.
So do we know if his dad is some kind of history buff that has those kind of books around, and James, little Jamesy boy, just happened to see them all the time or pull them off the shelves, and Matilda put them,
I don't know. I don't know that part, but I mean, he saw his dad reading this book, and
he pointed out that specific
probably
thing.
remembered the volcano from his dreams.
That's
and he was
crazy.
like, maybe he had a scene in his dream where he was flying over the volcano, and the picture in the book looked similar, and he was like, "Hey, that's where I got shot down."
Wow, that's nuts. Okay. What else does this kid know? Is that it, or does he know more?
Yeah. So a week after that, James's father talked to a veteran from Natoma Bay who remembered a pilot named Jack Larson. He said Larson flew off one day and never returned, so no one knew what happened to him. So that was actually the end of Jack Larson. They didn't know more of him. So a month after that, James's father, went to his first Natoma Bay reunion, and he learned about Jack Larson. And he learned that Jack Larson had actually survived the war. And then he also learned about a 21-year-old pilot that was lost during the Battle of Iwo Jima. And his name was James M. Huston Jr. And what's crazy about his name is that James, the little kid, whenever he would draw his plane crash, on paper, whatever, he would sign his signature. And every time he would do his signature, it would say James 3.
James the Third?
Like James the Third.
Oh my God.
Almost knowing that James M. Huston was him, but he was the second or junior.
And then he was the third. Wow. That is crazy. How does this little guy know all this stuff?
It's absolutely insane. I mean, it makes no sense. I don't know how he would know all of this unless he was reading books or surfing the internet.
Yeah, right.
At a young age, but
no.
But again, not a lot of people knew about who James M. Huston Jr. was. Like, it's not like he would just, or Jack Larson.
That is crazy. It's not like they were big famous names, in the war.
They're
not heroes, or they're heroes. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah, I mean, a prominent character like where you would know.
Thank you.
Yeah, so after the reunion, James's father would turn his focus on Huston, and he made a website looking for information, and he learned that Huston did not actually die on Iwo Jima itself. Instead, as the battle continued after the initial assault, he was one of 8 pilots from the ship who took part in a strike against transport vessels in a harbor on nearby Chichijima. As the Japanese were, they were preparing for a buildup of troop replacements and supplies. So his plane appeared to crash exactly as James had described by that volcano.
That's
so
insane. How did...
Those are his memories. These are the claims that he had, and a lot of it, as I mentioned earlier, checked out. But as James, the little kid, got older, the dreams started to fade away,
Hmm.
and he started living his second life, I guess,
His adult life of his
his adult
second
life.
life.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like we mentioned earlier, a lot of these cases, the main ones that are popular are usually kids, and then
Of
as they get
course.
older, they'll start
Fleeting.
forgetting because their own memories are coming into
Growing,
play.
and
Yeah.
they're holding new memories, and they have to make room for that in their little brains.
Yeah, and I always
It's
go back to
crazy.
the definition of reincarnation is
Hmm.
basically the rebirth of a soul in a new body, or um, basically a beginning of something, a new version of something from the past. Like I always say, like history always repeats itself, man. Like,
Yeah.
um,
The 90s have been reincarnated,
I
apparently.
mean, it's with everything, with like fashion,
Yeah,
songs, music, right? Everything, history repeats
it
itself,
does.
and I think it could repeat itself with reincarnation through like souls transferring into new
Yeah.
bodies.
Or this is just all simulation theory. This is all part of the simulation theory.
Yeah, it's like
Just
a
kidding.
video game where you just
Yeah.
start a new
Start a new
character.
character. Get rid of the old one. Start a new character.
With the
Yeah.
simulation theory, yo, there's something funny as hell. I was listening to the other day. Have you ever seen your neighbors bringing in the groceries?
Yes. And we
You
have
have?
at our old apartment. We saw people carrying their groceries in all the time.
Damn, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, my
Not
point
these guys
was,
here where we live now.
yeah, well, now that we're kind of in a house, it's a little bit
Yeah.
different.
Everybody has
But my point
garages
was
here.
that, like, you only focus on things that you want to focus on. Like,
Yeah.
you don't want to see your neighbors bringing in their groceries.
Yeah, I don't care about that. Yeah. Like, I care about you guys, but not watching you bring your groceries in. But yeah, all of that is so interesting. Like, just reincarnation. Could it be true? Could it not be true? Like, does it happen to everybody? We just don't
Have
remember.
Have you ever had something happen in your life where you thought maybe you were reincarnated?
Well,
Have you
not
ever had dreams of like, no?
not being reincarnated. Like, no, not like that. Like, I have dreams that I'm doing other things like myself, but in like a zombie apocalypse or like
Yeah.
random shit. You know what I mean? Like, not, I don't feel like I was ever somebody before this. Like,
Hmm.
I don't feel like that. But who's to say that's not, something,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like sometimes in your own family, you could have someone that looks almost exactly like someone, but that's not, I guess it's not reincarnation unless they have like similar traits or something. But
Yeah, I don't know. Have you seen, I don't know, it's totally off topic, but have you seen that picture of Nicolas Cage and the old time picture
oh,
of the
yeah,
man
yeah,
that
yeah.
looks like him? Like, is he reincarnated all these years later? Like,
Yeah. There's
even,
there's a lot of pictures of some celebrities with
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, I know. That one just cracks me up the most. But yeah, so let's talk about mine now. Let's see. I feel a little underprepared, FYI, because mine is super short compared to Mo's. Like, there are several conspiracy theories surrounding the story, but I'm only going to talk about the main two. So, basically, have you ever heard of Pan Am Flight 103?
No.
Okay.
No.
So, if you haven't heard of it, Pan Am Flight 103 was basically this flight that was scheduled from Heathrow Airport in London to New York's JFK Airport. And, excuse me, sorry. This happened on December 21st, 1988, and this was the third flight that was going on this route for the day. So everything was, running smoothly at the airports and there was no issues, but less than 40 minutes into this flight, it exploded.
What?
Just blew up in the middle of the air, okay? And it was a 747, a Boeing 747. So it had a lot of passengers on it, a total of 259 people, in fact. And they all died, of course. But
Oh my
they were
gosh.
over Scotland when this happened, okay? And it was Lockerbie, Scotland. And 11 people on the ground were killed by debris and stuff, also. So
Wow.
that's a lot of people. That's 271 people
Gosh,
right
man, what are the
there.
chances of you dying with airplane debris falling on you.
Yeah, no, I
That's
mean
crazy.
it's not usually a big
Chance,
percentage.
yeah.
Yeah, you know. But anyways, so this happened and people obviously wanted to know what the hell was going on, especially since there was 190 Americans on board. They wanted to know, like, why did this plane even explode? So this is what the FBI says happened. The FBI basically said they went to this crash site and they collected all this debris and all this evidence and all these pieces of things, and they started putting stuff back together so they could try to form, a scene, right, of what happened. And they find this one piece of luggage. All right. It was like a briefcase, if you will. And it had a radio inside of it, but the radio was a bomb. Okay.
Hmm.
So they know then that this flight is intentionally blown up, right? So they're trying to figure out, like, well, why would somebody do this, And they're thinking it's terrorism, of
Mm-hmm.
course. Like, what else do you think? Terrorists have an act for doing this sort of thing with flights, so why not?
Well, I mean, at this point, they found a bomb. It had to be a
Yeah,
terrorist act.
yeah.
I mean,
So basically, this was the worst lethal act of terrorism up until 9/11, until 9/11 happened. So
hmm
this was the worst that they had seen. Um, but they decided, to start looking into this more and trying to find out who was involved in this. And the evidence kind of led them to these two Libyan men who were intelligence operatives, and they ended up charging them. They went to court. This was a long, drawn out
wow.
deal. It wasn't even until 2001 that these men that they found guilty were sentenced. One of them was released in 2009, but he died from cancer, and the other one only survived like 3 years after that. So the Libyan government formally accepted responsibility for the bombings and for what these
Wow.
two men did, and they had to pay $3 billion across the board to the victims' families.
Wow.
So that is what they say happened. But a lot of people don't believe that that's these two men, yes, were responsible
They
for
were
this.
Libyan operatives.
Yes, they were
But
Libyan
did the luggage
operatives.
belong to them? For sure.
Yes.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Here's where the conspiracy theories kind of come in, okay? So at the time there was rumors of the CIA in the United States having these airline routes where they had set up drug smuggling operations to get
hmm
drugs to the US, okay? So this was supposedly one of the routes that the CIA had set up with Syria and their drug cartels, right? To get
What?
cocaine, weed, all that stuff over to the US. So
Damn.
here's where the Libyan men come in, okay? Apparently, they are part of a coalition, like a gang of terrorists, if you will. And they found out about this drug smuggling operation and they wanted to, like, fuck it up, right?
Huh.
They wanted to get some money too. They wanted to steal their product and they wanted to blow up the evidence, basically. So what they did is they had, like spies or moles or whatever telling them which suitcases are what, and they took the suitcases of drugs and switched them with a suitcase with a bomb,
Oh.
and they blew up the plane. So they had the drugs, and yeah, so the CIA actually, another part of this conspiracy theory is that the CIA knew that this was going to happen and they let it happen as a way to get out of the drug dealings with Syria.
Wow.
So I don't know, how much evidence there is on that. Like, obviously, this stuff has not been proven. That's why it's a conspiracy theory. But there's other conspiracy theories surrounding this as well. Like, At the time that this happened, the apartheid was going on in South Africa. And this former like UK diplomat, his name was Patrick Hazeldine. He basically said that they were responsible for it because we had sabotaged a Pan America flight as well. And so they were doing this as like a way of retribution. So obviously that one like is far fetched, and I'm not really gonna dive into that one too much. There's also conspiracy theories of Russia being involved in actually nuking these planes, like
Wow.
hitting them with missiles
Yeah.
or nuking them, like
I mean, it's really weird because usually with airplanes,
yeah,
anything could go wrong. Usually, like during takeoff, and for it
yeah.
to blow up, just randomly implode.
Yeah, and they say like it's like what the first 90 seconds or whatever a flight takes off. Like, I hate that we're even talking about this with a flight coming up. Like,
Well,
what the hell?
people fly all the time.
I know, but yeah, it just like what a trip, for this flight. And what sucks too is like all these people passed away. So if any of this stuff is true, people suck, bro, because they know that there's a ton of innocent people on here.
About 300 people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man, like why do you gotta do that? Why you guys gotta put innocent people's lives in the garbage because of shit like this? Like,
Yeah, I
just
did not know
ridiculous.
about that crash. I didn't even know
Yeah.
that there was a conspiracy involved with it. That's terrible.
It's definitely like worth really reading about the CIA drug smuggling part. Like there is a lot of information out there, but to me, like the most important thing to tell you was like it was them working with Syria, and they had this whole like hush hush operation. It was called Operation Korea, also with a C. So I always get a little bit, my interest always gets really piqued when the government has an operation name for something. Like, why do you have an
Yeah.
operation name if you're not doing anything? So why are you naming something you're not doing?
It's tactical. So.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. Mine,
That was interesting.
real short and sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know about it.
Yeah. I hadn't really known about it too much before finding it either. So
What we're going to do now is jump into our last story for this
Yes.
episode. And this is something that we both know about. And that is the John Lang story.
yes.
This one is pretty crazy, you guys. You're going to make a movie about it, probably.
Yeah, no, this needs to be made into a movie. It needs to be talked about. Somebody needs to investigate this stuff because it did not get taken care of, and there are still some
Yeah.
people on the loose.
It kind of reminds me of that Mark Wahlberg movie where he used to be a police officer, some Boston police officer, and then he was sent to jail because he confronted like the chief of police. Forgot the name of the movie.
Yeah. Oh, we'll have to find out and watch that. We got to watch
Yeah.
that again.
So, anyways, John Lang. He was a former Marine in his 40s, and he lived in Fresno, California. So that's the setting of this story.
Yeah.
He was a well-known person around town, and he was popular in the activist community there. John was the kind of person who wanted to expose suspected corruption in the Fresno law enforcement and political systems. He basically gained a lot of followers and likes on Facebook for some of his comments towards the Fresno police, and he was also posting on Fresno Bee, a newspaper publication. So basically, what had happened was, I believe that John one day caught some Fresno police officers running a scam.
Yeah, and it wasn't just like, it was over a little chunk of time, like that he noticed this was
over
happening.
a period of time.
Yeah. So,
They were basically scanning license plates and waiting for people and then pulling them over.
yes, they basically, so John was already in like this really rough point in his life anyways, and he and his wife were like fighting and having problems and stuff, and he got pulled over after leaving a Home Depot. And it was like 2 blocks after leaving the Home Depot. And he thought it was a little strange, but then he started noticing after that it was happening again and again and again, but to other people.
To other people, yeah.
Yeah.
So the police were running these license plates and they were pulling these people over. They would search the database, and mainly look for people with warrants or outstanding issues so they could have a reason for them to get pulled over. So from there, this keeps going on, and this is when John really started putting the police on his radar, started researching more, and he started putting up cameras around his house because he was getting concerned that the Fresno police had kind of taken notice of him because he was speaking out.
When he was like getting followed at that point, he thought he was getting followed. He didn't have proof at this point, but he just like got this feeling that he was being followed, and there would be like a car that would follow him home, like, or not even go all the way to his house, but like turn off like a couple blocks from his house or whatever. But this would happen consistently. So
he noticed the pickup truck that was following him around a lot.
Yeah.
And he would notice a pickup truck pull up in front of his house and kind of just stop, kind of glide through his street. So he put up, these cameras up around his property to capture these, occurrences. There is a lot of video of footage of his cameras online.
Well, like he would get like he would see these people that were in street clothes, plain clothes, not, these aren't cops that are walking around in their uniforms and stuff, but he would see these people and they would be like paying a little bit extra attention to just his house on this block. It's not like they were just, walking down the street, texting, listening to music, going for a jog. Like one of the guys was walking a dog, but he like stopped in front of John's house and was literally eyeing it up and down. Like there was another guy who just simply walked by it while there was a gardener, and they like looked at each other real quick and the guy just kept walking. Like it would just weird stuff, right?
So it's absolutely weird. I mean, I'd be weirded out if one of my neighbors was doing that. But what John actually started doing was that he actually made a YouTube channel and he started uploading these videos, these occurrences caught on his security system. And on these videos, in the description, he would go into detail about what's going on in this video. So the first couple of videos were basically just of that pickup truck that had been following him around town. And you can see this gray truck a couple of times just drive through his street, slow down in front of his house, and drive off.
So sketch.
Yeah, and then in one of the videos, it actually pulls up to a street, slows down in front of his house, passes his house, and then parks up to the side for a few seconds, and then leaves. And again, in the description of these videos, he's going into detail about what he thinks it is, and he thinks that was, undercover Fresno police trying to intimidate him.
There's like incidences of like carpet cleaning vans that drive by and people get out and it's right in front of his house, right in front of his fence. There's other videos of him seeing people in a different van, not the carpet cleaning van, but a completely, it looks like a suburban soccer mom van.
It was crazy. Yeah, there was a video of this black minivan that pulls up right in front of his house. Yeah. Okay. And then the passenger, the passenger door on a minivan, guys, that slides open. Yeah. Basically slides open the door right in front of his house, and this man in a top hat, a tan top hat, is recording his house, what he described as a thermal imaging camera.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at it, it's definitely a camera. It is some kind of camera.
And if I saw anyone pull up to like the front of our house and do that, dude, I would catch that license plate and see what sketchy. I mean, that's really sketchy. Yeah.
Well, and while all this is going on and he's uploading these videos and he's talking about all of this to the Fresno Bee, to his followers, he's tweeting at ABC 30 Action News, which was his local news station, right? And the guy that he's tweeting at his name is Corin Hoggard, and he's obviously a news anchor. But he said, Corin, you want some news? Corrupt Fresno cops are going to try to kill me this weekend, possibly tonight. This is no joke. Please follow up on my story regardless of what version the cops and the Fresno Bee come up with. Please check out this link and this other link for his YouTube channel.
So there were a couple more videos that he uploaded Now, there was a video of a person walking his dog that walked up to
Mm-hmm.
the fence, and he claimed that that person was trying to get John's dog accompanied, like basically accustomed to his dog and his smell.
Yeah.
So if he ever tries to break in, his dog wouldn't bark or whatnot.
I think is this it right here? Because if so, I really want to walk or watch it really quick. I don't know. Okay. So, oh, here it is. I saw it. Conditioning. Yeah, it was Fresno LE conditioning my dog and neighbors' dogs at 11:30 p.m.
Yeah.
Why are you walking? Why are you? I don't know. It could be coincidence. Maybe the dogs
The
just smelled each other and the owner was like, whatever. But that's so sketchy.
the next video was of a man who was walking down the street on the same side as John's house, and he was texting, and then he eventually ended up stopping and looking at John's property, just kind of evaluating it, and then walking past it. The camera's following this guy, and then he goes a little bit down the street, literally like 2 houses over, gets into a car, and then leaves.
Wow.
And the last two videos, I believe, was one that you mentioned, was a van, basically like a cargo van that you would think for some sort of, work, maybe a painter's van or whatnot, that was parked in front of his house. There was guys hanging outside of the van.
Yeah.
And
We should talk about the cops that all
Yeah.
show up too.
so then one of the videos, this one is crazy. There's literally in this video like 6 cop cars
Yeah.
hanging out outside of his house for no
A
reason.
bunch of cops definitely trying to intimidate him and definitely trying to get him like sketched out. And these like videos, most of them are at night, guys. Like some of them, yes, are in the like daytime and it can be seen clear as day that, somebody is walking by. But a lot of this stuff is at nighttime. Like, oh yeah, just I'm looking at one of the videos right here and here it is. Look at all these cops.
Yeah, he claimed that cops would drive through his streets with the sirens on
Oh
at like 2 or 3 a.m. to mess with him.
Yeah.
And then, this video of literally like 6 cop cars and a bunch of cops just hanging outside of his house for no
right
reason.
across the street. Yep. It's so sketchy and it just gets worse from there, really. I
Yeah.
mean, these videos and all this is going on. He's tweeting literally for his life, guys. He tweeted at one point, he was like, anybody in the area want to come and spend the night at my house? You have to be a registered gun owner though. Like who wants to be a what did he say, like a protector or something like that, because he knew that these guys were doing this. And again, from the beginning, it wasn't just him finding out about this police scam. It was also so much more than that. Like he had a lot of opposition to the way Fresno was being run. There's a lot of corruption in Fresno anyways, and their political system with law enforcement. So he had even, as petty as this is, he had even debated with the fire chief in Fresno about their budget to fight fires.
Yeah,
So-
I don't know if people just didn't like this guy, probably. I don't know.
And he
It's
was
weird.
very vocal too, to the point like the Fresno Bee, it's a newspaper publication. He would literally get on there, and he had over 2,500 comments on their social media page, and thousands of people liking his stuff and following what he had to say. But where were all those people when this all was happening? Like.
Now, one of the videos actually that he posted was he claimed that somebody has tampered with his security system because there was about 20 minutes missing from the footage.
Yes.
And the next video is the craziest. So one day, his neighbor that he barely ever talks to invites him over for dinner. 2 of his neighbors, right? So they go over to this guy's house. Johnny thinks it's weird. I mean, I've never talked to this guy, but why not? So he goes over to dinner and he catches the vibe right away. He's not feeling good. There's a weird vibe going around, and he decides that he wants to leave. When he tells his neighbors that he wants to leave, they block his way. They block the door and prevent him from leaving the house. And at that point, Johnny obviously knows that something is up.
Yep.
He pushes past them, gets onto the street, and this is where his security camera, records him walk into his house. His neighbors are following behind him. And Johnny lives in like a fenced out house. It has like a gate that you have to use a key to get in. So they're trying to block him from getting into his own house, his yard. He pushes past them, and as he pushes past them and starts going up the stairs to his house, the neighbors yell his name. And Johnny claims that his neighbors yelling his name was a sign for whoever's inside his house that he's coming in.
Wow.
And that day, Johnny found that the lock to his main door was tampered with, as well as his computers.
So somebody's now been in his home. Someone has now mapped out his home. And it's clear that this is intimidation. There is no denying that. If you have police officers just literally hanging out outside of your house that have never been there before, it's not part of their routine routes. It's not their jurisdiction, probably.
Think about it from his point of view. I mean, he's seeing all this happen. Some random van pulls up with a thermal imaging camera. It looks like a thermal imaging camera. Like, I mean,
yeah,
it's not just any old camera. His neighbors are acting weird. These cops pulling up in front of his house. He's being very vocal
about a corrupt system.
Yes. You know?
Well, okay. So can we talk about what happens next, though? Like, with him? Like,
yeah, go ahead.
After all of this like crazy stuff started going down, he had, all these cameras and stuff. And the day before his house caught on fire, the cameras stopped working. Like there's no footage, okay, the day before. So his house catches on fire, guys, all right? And there was already firefighters and police and paramedics down the street from where he lived because they were on a different call. And neighbors of John started trying to like flag them down and get them to come to the scene of this fire. And they can't get in.
Yeah, he was barricaded in.
Yeah, they can't get in his house like without a lot of effort.
Yeah.
So basically they get into his house, and he is found on the floor with stab wounds in his back.
Well, that's what the original autopsy was, that there was multiple stab wounds on the back, yeah, and in the front. That was the cause of no.
They don't know. They haven't decided.
Asphyxiation was the cause of death.
Asphyxiation or the stab wounds, because he was still bleeding.
Yeah.
When they got into.
But then what happened next? Go ahead.
Well, yeah. So basically that happened, and they ruled it a suicide.
Well, hold up. So there was a second autopsy done with another. Yeah. So yes, and during this autopsy, there was two police officers or police chiefs.
Oh, right.
And during this autopsy.
Yes.
And they reverted or retracted all those comments about the stab wounds.
Yeah.
Like, hey, there was no stab wounds in the back. It was all self-inflicted. It was only in the front, and that he died, of asphyxiation. I think. That's what
Yeah. And I don't know why if they have that much power to go in there and intimidate the coroner too, why they even kept the fact that there was stab wounds.
But yeah, that's the key point, is that they retracted those comments of stab wound. How the heck are you going to stab yourself in the back, bro?
There's other cases of people like who have been in situations like that where they have stab marks in their back and they're dead, and people are saying it's suicide. How the hell? Look. You can't do that. I'd stab myself in the back of the neck if I tried.
And the thing with this case is that that's what it was left at. This guy was begging for help on social media.
Yeah.
He was posting on YouTube everything that he could do, that, hey, this is going on.
Yeah.
He was found dead. The first autopsy said that he was stabbed in the back, and then it was retracted. Like, that is so shady.
And this is all happening with a law enforcement agency and a political scene that are already corrupt.
Yeah.
And he's calling them out for it and holding them accountable for it.
Fresno police at the time was known for being corrupt.
Yes.
I believe that their police chief, prior to the one they had at this time, they were caught for like drug dealing and stuff like that.
There's been a lot of controversy surrounding this whole area and the inner workings of it. So I think that he was the first person to really stand up, provide facts, to be vocal, and they got intimidated by him. So they did what they could
Eliminated him.
to eliminate him
Yeah.
and the threat. Because with all of the stuff that was going on that John was talking about, like these corporations, these agencies were making extra money because of what they were doing. So they don't want to have to stop raking in extra cash. And who knows if it was for profit of the officers or if it was just profit for the city. But either way, they don't want this cash cow scam that they have to be caught up, you know? So just absolutely ridiculous what happened.
Well, what I was thinking is if somebody wanted to commit suicide, why would they stab themselves in the stomach or in the back and then set the house on fire?
Like two horrible, 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 horrible ways to die that most people that commit suicide do not choose to do. What? Like,
And this guy's literally, he literally was stating on his social media, like, if something, oh yeah, we forgot to mention this. The day of the van, that paint van was parked outside his house. He made a status. He made a status saying that if something happens to me, remember this van.
yes.
And then I believe someone on a Facebook group, Facebook is very strong when it comes to things like this. So someone looked up the name of the business that was printed on the van, and they've come about, it was a fake. It was a fake business. It was phony.
Yep. So it wasn't even real. Another post, like we should talk about some of these posts too, like because it's right from him. He posted on Facebook, just wanted to give you a heads up. If anything happens to me in the next day or two, it'll be the result of Fresno PD, my neighbor, and an employee at my job pay less breaks and tires on Blackstone. And then someone commented and they said, wow, sending prayers of protection your way. God be with you. And he replied, thank you.
I can imagine Fresno police approaching people and kind of turning them against him, like, hey, your neighbor's up to something. We need your help.
Or just blackmailing them.
Yeah.
Like they're police. They're going to intimidate anybody. They could go up to any single person and be like, hey, you're going to do this for us or we're going to do this to you. And it's a scare tactic to get them to do what you want.
Well, that's going to bring us to an end here.
There's a lot.
Let us know what you guys think about each of the stories. Reincarnation, Pan Am.
Yeah.
Pan Am what? What was
Flight
it called?
103.
Flight 103, and then Johnny Lang.
Yes.
A lot of cool stories. I mean,
yeah, there's so many conspiracy theories out there to cover. So much good stuff.
If you liked today's episode, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, give us a follow and a rating. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at The Les and Mo Show.
The more you know, the less you fear. So tune in next week, right back here.